that weird distortion in the left channel again. That's on every pressing.
This mic? Oh, good. Good evening, everyone. This is Richard Kimball. We are now live from the record plant. I'll have to get some formalities out of the way by telling you that the following is in cooperation with ABC Dunhill Records for promotional and other considerations. With that out of the way, would you please welcome, live from the record plant in Los Angeles, Steely Dan.
That's good. That's wonderful. We all ain't here yet.
They can't start yet because they're missing a drummer who had to go to the bathroom, I suppose.
Los Angeles, 1974. Steely Dan had called it a day as far as live performances were concerned. They were absolutely done. And it was kind of the end of the band unit as we knew it up through the first three albums and then into, the tour into 1974, which went up until about mid-July of 74. At that point in time, Donald and Walter wanted to work on the next album. They were working on new songs. They were renting homes in Studio City, driving down Laurel Canyon, over the mountain, basically, down into Beverly Hills and into the new ABC recording studios. They had picked up Jeff Porcaro, an amazing drummer, at that point in time, all of about 21 years old. He had been, drumming on the Sonny and Cher show and on some Sonny and Cher live dates. Also, Michael McDonald, incredible vocalist, keyboard player. Both of those guys were on the 74 tour, along with, Royce Jones on some percussion and backup vocals as well. Of course, Denny Diaz, he would continue on Katy Lied. He played a major part in that record. And also in the kind of assembly of the final product. We'll talk about that later. This is one of the most... This album, the recording of the album, Katy Lied, the fourth Steely Dan album, this is when Donald and Walter, this is when they kind of created the model for the rest of the way up until 1980 as far as they were concerned. They were going to be working with selected studio cats, whether it was in Los Angeles or New York or anywhere in between. The band was no longer the band, and Steely Dan was really Donald Fagen and Walter Becker. So late summer 1974, ABC Records would love to have a new Steely Dan album out in time for the holiday season. Pressure was on, and these guys were hoping to meet that commitment, although knowing those guys, that was going to be a stretch because the album eventually didn't come out until March of 1975. I think ABC was disappointed. Donald and Walter were not making a lot of money. They were using up so much studio time and expenditure on things like a brand new Bosendorfer piano, not cheap at that point in time. They were being penalized for all of the studio time and the extravagant, they were paying high day rates to some of these players. Chuck Rainey, famously, incredible bass player. It's one of the reasons why you don't see Walter Becker playing bass a lot on the following records. Chuck Rainey was in the pocket now. Bringing in the great Phil Woods for some saxophone solos couldn't have been cheap either. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Everybody knows the story. It's basically the DBX Gremlin story. There is an incredible article from Denny Diaz. Some people think that he went a little too far in his descriptions, or his memory might not be perfect, but it is a great read. DBX was a brand new technology, new on the scene in 1974, 1975. It was a noise reduction system. When you're recording the tape, there is always ambient noise issues that you want to resolve before you basically plate the finished product. And the leading technology at the time previously was the Dolby noise reduction system. There are different scenarios, and it's not 100% clear whose ultimate decision it was to use this new DBX noise reduction system. Some people say it was Roger Nichols, some people say it was Walter Becker. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's something that did happen. The 24-track master tape was mixed down to a 2-track, and it was a 30 IPS tape that they ran through this DBX noise reduction system. And the results were horrible. These guys were shocked. There are various interviews out there. One is an actual interview from, I think, 1976, 1977. They were talking about, it was during the recording of Asia, and first of all, Donald and Walter didn't talk a lot about what happened, and they wanted to move on. They were really disappointed with the sound of the record. Now, if you listen to a copy of Katy Lied Today, one of the original pressings from ABC Records, you will actually hear with your own ears a degraded recording. And basically what happened is that DBX system caused damage. The guys actually flew out to Boston to the DBX headquarters at the time, desperately trying to seek a solution, a resolution, what can be done. DBX did some kind of manual fixes to that tape, and they brought it back, and they originally went to Alan Zentz mastering, decided to move away from Alan Zentz to Kendon Recorders in Burbank. Kendon Recorders had some more advanced processing systems, and they wanted to come up with something that would have an improved sound quality that could be eventually pressed and released. Now, one of the first issues that was noticed when they went to the actual mastering stage is that the cymbals were recorded too hot, and that caused tone arms and needles to jump. Remember, in 1975, they had to be concerned about this playing on the cheapest systems and then all the way to the mid-market and above. There was a wide swath of turntables. Remember, in 1975, vinyl records are the #1 medium at that point in time. So they had to be able to deliver a product that would not have an issue with playback. And eventually, you know, Denny Diaz says in this story that he actually took the tapes and started working on them at Kendon Recorders. He had to bring in some different monitor speakers that he was used to so he could hear properly. And at the end of the day, Walter Becker apparently pitched in and helped as well. They were able to deliver a serviceable final end product that they weren't happy with, but they decided it had to be released. They were pressured for time. It was the best it was going to be, unless they wanted to go back to the 24-track master tapes and do a whole new mix down. It probably would have taken a month. And Donald and Walter made the decision, and ultimately ABC Records made the decision to move on, release the record, and not look back. That's what happened. If you listen to an ABC pressing today, the big knock on the sound on the record is, first of all, if you go read the Hoffman Forum, there are several threads on this issue. And a lot of people will say, geez, I didn't even know that there was something wrong with this until I read about it. So it's not a horrible sounding record. Steely Dan, they were such perfectionists that all of their recordings are fantastic. Now, the only bummer in the punch is this Katy lied situation. And you will hear on certain tracks a washed out sound, especially prevalent on the cymbal hits. For a nice cymbal hit, you want to hear a natural decay, a shimmering of that cymbal as that sound kind of reverberates and eventually decays and disappears. With the cymbal hits on Katy Lied, it's all kind of muted and washed out, and you don't have that clarity of actually hearing that shimmering sound of a cymbal, finishing as far as sound waves are concerned. So you have that situation. Then you have some kind of phasing, weird swishy phasing on Fagen's vocals on a couple of songs as well. So that has always been an issue, which brings me to my next point. I am really interested to see what Bernie Grundman can do with, and we know he's not starting from the beginning with the 24 track master tapes. He's not going to do a remix as far as I know. There is a video with Chad and Bernie discussing the master tapes when the whole UHQR project was announced. And it's really interesting and really telling. So Bernie's going to be working with that 2-track 30 IPS mixed down master tape. That already has this baked in issue that was partially fixed originally back in 1975, but it's still going to be there. So in 2023, what can Bernie Grundman do to improve the sound quality of that master tape? That is the real question here. And that's why I'm so interested to see, and I will be purchasing that Katy Lied UHQR. Now, I was recently tipped off. Apparently there was a random post on the Steely Dan UHQR, 100-page thread on the Hoffman Forum. I was tipped off by a longtime fan of the channel. His name is Bill. He sent me an email, and he said, hey, have you heard about this Outlier pressing of Katy Lied? And what it is a repress from later, one assumes in 1975, of Katy Lied. It's on that ABC label. Instead of one of the pressing plants, which were Pittman, Indianapolis, Terre Haute, and Santa Maria, usually on those pressings you have a CTH for Columbia Terre Haute or a CSM for Columbia Santa Maria circled in the dead wax on either side of those pressings. There are two cases of represses that don't have a pressing plant indicator in the dead wax. What they do have, kind of mysteriously, is an AM circled. And I went and looked at the roster of the Kendon Recorders mastering engineers at the time. I can't find anyone named AM. And we don't know, I don't know, Bill, my buddy, doesn't know what the hell is AM, and also the poster on the original poster on the Hoffman forums. The reason for the video today was twofold. I did a little scan on YouTube, and I haven't seen a good video talking about this whole Katy lied, the DBX whole Gremlin situation. And then I thought it would be, this is kind of newsworthy. These two kind of outlier pressings, the represses, believe it or not, they sound better than the Columbia Santa Maria. I have 2 copies of the Columbia Santa Maria. Many people are making comments, on Discogs under these 2 pressings. Yours included. I made a comment. Here's the thing: this pressing improves on the main issues with that original ABC pressing. The washed out cymbals, they sound a little more clear. There's a little more clarity, and you can actually pick up a little bit of cymbal decay. They're not perfect. This is not Gaucho or Asia quality cymbal hits and sounds that you're hearing on Katy Lied. But this pressing, it slightly improves. Also, the entire record has a little more clarity. It's not as veiled as those first pressings. That's another complaint out there is, this thing kind of seems veiled and a little congested. It's hard to pick up, as far as the clarity, and in the soundstage, it's hard to pick out the individual instruments. Now, that doesn't mean it's a horrible sounding record. But like I mentioned, these 2 repress pressings, there's 2 of them. I have one, and there are comments on the other one as well, but these 2 outliers that have AM circled, they improve on the original damaged recordings. Now, you take that record, you take the original pressing, the Terre Haute or the Santa Maria, put it on your turntable, have some people over. They're not going to know, okay? They're going to say, wow, this is a pretty cool album, and man, these songs are really interesting. And this was the 4th Steely Dan record. They decided to move in a direction of more jazz, more blues. This is a lot more piano driven. They brought in Michael O'Martin. Not sure if I'm pronouncing O'Martin's name correctly. Great piano player. Fagan did a lot of piano playing as well. It's a gorgeous record. The more I haven't heard this thing in a while. When I got tipped off, it's like I pulled out my original pressing and gave it a listen. And like I mentioned, I have 2 pressings. This is the Santa Maria. I'm using a new labeling system. I've mentioned this before. It came with the heavy cardstock with all the lyrics. And then we have a repress. Now the repress, there are a couple differences. Again, in the dead wax, you will see that AM circled. And there are a couple differences in the layout of the label as well. One main difference, actually. On the AM pressing, you will notice that produced by Gary Katz, the Gary Katz credit is actually below the songwriting credits. Now, produced by Gary Katz on the earlier pressings, the Santa Maria, the Terre Haute, the Pittman, and the Indianapolis, the credit for Gary Katz is above the songwriting credit. So that is one interesting item here that really distinguishes this label as being different from the earlier labels. Now, it's also interesting that Acoustic Sounds decided to shuffle the release schedule for the UHQRs. They are going to be skipping Katy Lied. Katy Lied is coming out, I believe, sometime next year. So we're going to be getting Pretzel Logic fairly soon. And then I believe September is slated for Asia, and December is going to be Gaucho. So they're going to go back and hit Katy Lied and Royal Scam, I'm assuming sometime next year. It begs the question, why isn't Katy Lied coming out after Pretzel Logic? And they're skipping that and moving on, and also skipping Royal Scam and moving right into Asia. I see one possibility is money. Maybe they want to kind of do a cash hit this year, and presumably Asia is going to be the best selling of all of the UHQRs. We will see, but maybe that's what's behind that. Or is Bernie running into issues in doing several cuts and test cuts? Is he and Chad, I'm just speculating, are they realizing, this is, this is actually not as clear cut as maybe the first 2 or 3 were, and we're not happy with the results. Let's keep working on that, but in the meantime, time is marching on, and they decided to skip and move into Asia for September and Gaucho in December. Pure speculation, ladies and gentlemen. If anybody has any more info on that, feel free to drop a comment and interact. Let's start a discourse here. But I'm not here to I don't want to create any rumors. I'm not insinuating anything is wrong, but just looking at the history of Katy Lied and that compromised recording, that end product, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what Bernie Grunman can do with what he was handed. Probably one of the weirdest freak out covers of any rock album. That is actually a play on Katy Lied. It's a catalid insect, kind of like a praying mantis. Another photograph taken by Donald Fagen's girlfriend at the time. So remember, Donald Fagen's girlfriend did the original painting for Countdown to Ecstasy as well. So interesting that she is still contributing, and they went with this. I think it's absolutely perfect. I love it, and I love the kind of out of focus effect, and those kind of murky green tones are interesting as well. Curiously enough, the Rockstar video game series put out a recording of Black Friday, and it is supposedly from the multi-tracks, and the clarity and sound separation of instruments on this thing is absolutely amazing. It's jaw-dropping. It's something I wasn't aware of, but in researching this video, looking at all the Hoffman threads, I actually was on Reddit as well. And that's when I found out about the Rockstar video game cut of Black Friday. That points to there being no issue with the multi-tracks. The only issue is that final mixed down 2-track master tape that was put through this DBX noise reduction system. Now there are also, I mentioned the situation with the cymbal sounds. There is also some detail in these threads and in the Denny Diaz piece talking about they placed condenser mics a little too close. They too closely mic'd the Jeff Porcaro drum set, and rather than maybe using a ribbon mic, these condenser mics recorded the cymbal sounds too hot, which made the pressing and mastering, which made the mastering and ultimate pressing an issue as far as the test pressings cut too hot and causing issues in playback. I don't think I talked about, there are a couple other formats that people have investigated as far as, hey, maybe that will be better than these original ABC pressings. Don't bother with the MCA label Katy Lied pressings. These are second, third, fourth generation sources, and even worse than a not perfect first pressing. So don't bother with the MCAs. But other people will point to, this is all very subjective, but there are opinions out there that you can read about saying that some people think that the Citizen Steely Dan box set from 1993, those versions of the songs sound a little more crisper, a little more tight, a little more clarity involved, less veiled than that original vinyl pressing. So maybe consider that. Other people will point to the Steve Hoffman mastered CD. Steve Hoffman actually chimed in and said, nope, I used that same 30 IPS 2-track master. I just played around with the levels and I thought it sounded okay. So there's that. And then also this Japanese SHM CD format. Supposedly some people believe that sounds better, but most people do not agree with that viewpoint and they don't think it's anything special. So those are some other CD formats to think about, or at least consider if you wanted to like do a super crazy shootout. If you are an obscene Steely Dan obsessive like some of us are, you could do that. The bottom line is Katy Lied is a wonderful album. It's often overlooked. It's an important album in the discography. Unfortunately, the finished product, the recording quality was slightly marred. But we are all looking forward to see what is going to come from the UHQR, hopefully sometime next year. I'm waiting patiently. Thanks, everybody. Take care.